Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Lots to get through today. We're going to start on the other side of the Atlantic with the remarkable, I've run out of adjectives actually. I can't say remarkable, astonishing, unprecedented. What's that word he invented? Unprecedented. Run out of adjectives. How can you possibly describe an official press spokesman standing up at a White House press conference and lying through his teeth? It's quite incredible. And then the paid counsellor, this Kellyanne Conway woman who, well, footage emerged over the weekend of her warning about the absolute horrors that would follow if Donald Trump was ever elected, but that was before she was on the payroll. She's on the payroll now, and she told a reputable news organisation that there is something other than facts. You have facts, and then you have alternative facts. It'd be funny if it wasn't so frightening. Today's not a day for an argument about whether or not you find Donald Trump's bizarre brand of demagoguery attractive or not. I think we can all agree that these are two massive lies. The argument that the inauguration crowd was the biggest that there had ever been is palpably absurd. It's as if they're trying to redefine counting. You have a White House press spokesman standing up and effectively trying to persuade the press, the assembled fourth estate, that 2 + 2 = 5. That is what happened this weekend. And I still sort of, as I say the words out loud, I still find myself reeling slightly at the sheer scale of the con. It's incredible. Unless you read history. And if you read history, it's quite remarkably banal. It's so familiar. It's happened so many times before. Do you know, in the 18th century in Russia, there's some historical dispute about just how widespread this was, but there was something called Potemkin villages, or a Potemkin village, which was, you know, when you watch a film about a film and you see the street is literally just the facade. You know, the set has just literally got the fronts of the houses there, and behind it, it's just scaffolding. There's nothing behind it. That was a Potemkin village. And they used to erect them at the roadside whenever Catherine the Great was making her way through the empire, so that she'd believe things were a lot better than they really were. You could sort of hide starving peasants behind these facades. The Potemkin village being a kind of opposite of what Donald Trump is doing. This was where the tools of government, if you like, tried to hide reality from the actual leader. Now you've got the tools of government trying to hide reality from the actual population. And then this woman, Kellyanne Conway, goes out on telly to describe the lies as alternative facts.
And joining me now is the counselor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway. Ms. Conway, welcome to the White House North Lawn, which will become a familiar place for you, I think, for the next few years. Let me begin with this question. The presidency is about choices. So I'm curious why President Trump chose yesterday to send out his press secretary to essentially litigate a provable falsehood when it comes to a small and petty thing like inaugural crowd size. I guess my question to you is, why do that?
Chuck, the president did many things yesterday and the day before that are very meaningful to America. He signed executive orders to stop Obamacare and all of its problems. Millions of people have lost their insurance, their doctors, their plans. So that stops right now. He's going to replace it with something much more free market and patient-centric in nature. And on this matter of crowd size, for me, I think the most quantifiable points of interest for Americans should be what just happened a few months ago that brought him here, the 31 of 50 states he won, the 2,600 counties, the 200 counties that went for President Obama that now went to President Trump, and the fact that 29, 30 million women voted for Donald Trump for president. They should be respected. Somebody should cover their voices as well. I'm about things that are quantifiable and important. I don't think ultimately presidents are judged by crowd sizes at their inauguration. I think they're judged by their accomplishments. And we know that President Obama and his accomplishments, so there's a lot of unfinished business there. And on this matter of crowd size, I think it is a symbol for the unfair and incomplete treatment that this president often receives. I'm very heartened to see Nielsen just came out with the ratings, 31 million people watching the inauguration. President Obama had 20.5 million watching his second inauguration 4 short years ago. So we know people are also watching the inauguration on different screens. and in different modes. And that there was, I mean, for me, there was a prediction of a downpour of rain. I think that deterred many people from coming. But no question, there were hundreds of thousands of people out on the mall.
All right, Kellyanne, let me stop you here because you make a very reasonable and rational case for why crowd sizes don't matter. Then explain, you did not answer the question. Why did the president send out his press secretary, who's not just the spokesperson for Donald Trump, he also serves as the spokesperson for all of America at times. He speaks for all of the country at times. Why put him out there for the very first time in front of that podium to utter a provable falsehood? It's a small thing, but the first time he confronts the public, it's a falsehood?
Chuck, I mean, if we're going to keep referring to our press secretary in those types of terms, I think that we're going to have to rethink our relationship here. I want to have a great open relationship with our press, but look what happened the day before, talking about falsehoods. We allowed the press to come into the Oval Office and witness President Trump signing executive orders. And of course, you know, the Senate had just confirmed General Mattis and General Kelly to their 2 posts, and we allow the press in. And what happens almost immediately? A falsehood is told about removing the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. That's just flat out false. And
it was corrected immediately.
Chuck, why was it said? Chuck, why was it said in the first place? Because everybody is so presumptively negative.
Climb into the head of that reporter.
No, that it's okay. No, excuse me. Oh, no. That reporter was writing on behalf of the press pool. That falsehood got spread 3,000 times before it was corrected.
Excuse
me.
And it's still out there. It does not excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
Chuck, do you think it's a fact or not that millions of people have lost their plans, their health insurance, and their doctors under President Obama? Do you think it's a fact that everything we heard from these women yesterday happened on the watch of Barack Obama? He was president for 8 years. Donald Trump's been here for about 8 hours. Do you think it's a fact that millions of women, 16.1 million women, as I stand here before you today, are in poverty along with their kids? Do you think it's a fact that millions don't have health care? Do you think it's a fact that we spent billions of dollars on education in the last 8 years, only to have millions of kids still stuck in schools that fail them every single day? These are the facts that I want the press corps to cover, and this is why I'm here at the White House.
I understand
to change
what I don't
awful
understand
numbers
is
like that.
That is not what yesterday was about. So you have not answered the question. You did not answer the question.
It's what this presidency is going to be about.
You sent the press secretary out there to utter a falsehood on the smallest, pettiest thing.
I don't think anybody can prove that. Look, I actually don't think that. Maybe this is me as a pollster, Chuck, and you know data well. I don't think you can prove those numbers one way or the other. There's no way to really quantify crowds. We all know that. You can laugh at me all you want, but I'm very glad.
I'm just
Chuck,
befuddled.
Well, but you are, and I think it's actually symbolic of the way we're treated by the press. The way that you just laughed at me is actually symbolic of the way, very representative of the way we're treated by the press. I'll just ignore it. I'm bigger than that. I'm a kind and gracious person. But let me tell you something else. I'm really glad that NBC News and Chuck Todd all of a sudden are so thrilled to cover crowd control, because we were mocked daily for talking about the significance of our historic rallies during the campaign. Donald Trump brought in historic crowds to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to Pennsylvania, to Florida, to North Carolina, and on great days we were ignored, and on most days we were mocked. And those crowds did matter because he built a movement the likes of which people haven't seen.
What I don't understand is why he's litigating this. Why stand in front of a memorial at the CIA.
What else
and
did he
talk
say at the
about
CIA,
crowd
though?
sizes.
You don't want to talk about the rest of this, what he said at the CIA. First of all, his very presence at the CIA sent a great message to our men and women, our brave men and women in the intelligence community. He went to the CIA yesterday. He thought he was going to witness the swearing in of his CIA director, Mike Pompeo. But you know why that didn't happen, Chuck? Because the United States Senate won't confirm Mike Pompeo as CIA director. Ask Senator Schumer why that is.
That is going to be a question I have for him.
Ask him why Donald Trump as president has nominated 21 of the 21 cabinet positions only to have grand total of 2 confirmed while he takes office. So the Democratic Senate wants to hold up Treasury, Commerce, Energy, Education, the list goes on. We should have the respect and deference of having a cabinet seated so this peaceful transition of power occurs properly. But he went to the CIA because lies have been told about his relationship and his respect for the intelligence community. So he went right there. We had over 1,000 requests to attend. We can only accommodate 300 or 400. And he embraced the intelligence community.
Can I ask you to tell me what lies about the intelligence community were uttered about President Trump's relationship with the intelligence community?
That he doesn't respect them? Do you think what outgoing CIA director said yesterday in a statement using the vocabulary, the language he used about our new president of the United States somehow, quote, improves our relationship with the intelligence community? It is irresponsible, it is reprehensible, it is totally unnecessary.
Then let me ask you this. Is this responsible? He called it, was disgraceful intelligence agencies allowed any information so false and fake out disgrace, say that's something Nazi Germany would have done and did so. Disgrace, that was on January 11th. Was it right to compare the intelligence community with Nazi Germany?
What's not right, Chuck, is that the day before, you had people releasing a dossier full of junk and lies and fake news. And why did they release the dossier? Because people knew that Russian hacking was fading from you as an election that had been totally dismissed as having any credibility or nexus towards our election results. Hillary Clinton lost that election fairly and squarely, basically running on the same messages we heard here yesterday in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. I heard like a repeat. It was this awful sequel. Right. As awful as the original. We just litigated all this in the campaign, and they came to Washington and said the same thing. President Trump is very concerned about the leaks that have occurred, and he's very concerned that people would really denigrate the respect that he has for men and women of the intelligence community. Why don't you go back to his statement on Friday, January 6th, after he had an intelligence briefing that he and Vice President Pence won't talk about because it's top secret, and they won't leak about it because you're not supposed to. They're protecting our intelligence, and they're protecting the security of people like you and me and our children, Chuck, by not leaking. But what he said that day on January 6th, put that statement up for your viewers if you want to do us an honest service. He said in the beginning of the statement, I respect the service of our great men and women in the intelligence community. And then the last part of the statement was that he looks forward to directing his own intelligence team within 90 days of becoming the President of the United States to give us a better view of cybersecurity and to put better security measures in place. It'd be nice if he had a CIA director. He doesn't today because the Democrats are holding up his CIA director.
I want to go back to a question that you continue to deflect. Why was it necessary to send out the press secretary on his first day in office to utter a provable falsehood that now calls into question everything the press secretary will say from here on out? It will for many Americans.
No, it doesn't. You want them to hear that. You want them to hear that I'm not answering your questions, which I'm doing. You want them to hear that they can't trust our press secretary. I think that is a very dangerous statement to me.
What was the motive to have this ridiculous litigation of crowd size?
And now you're casting it, and your job is not to give your opinion, Chuck. Respectfully, your job is not to call things ridiculous that are said by our press secretary and our president. That's not your job. You're supposed to be a news person. You're not an opinion columnist.
Can you please answer the question? Why did he do this? You have not answered it.
I'll answer it this way. Think about what you just said to your viewers. That's why we feel compelled to go out and clear the air and put alternative facts out there.
It's a political tactic to come up with alternative facts and try to set up the press as your enemy?
No, I didn't say that at all, and that's not why I'm here in this building. I'm here because of all the provable, quantifiable facts, because of the devastation and destruction in our schools, with our healthcare, in our economy, with our small business owners, and yes, certainly with terrorism, our infrastructure. This guy's going to do so much in the first week. He's going to talk to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today about the Middle East, about Iran. He's going to end the week receiving Prime Minister Theresa May from the UK here, his first foreign leader to be received here. They're going to help renegotiate U.S.-UK trade. But you want to talk about things the media doesn't want to cover. You totally missed Brexit and Theresa May. You totally missed Trump's campaign. You want to talk about provable facts. You've missed it all along. America doesn't really... I mean, look, you've got a 14% approval rating in the media that you've earned. You want to push back on us, and yet you have a 14% approval rating. All I'm looking for
is an answer to a simple question. You never answered why or the motivation of what was necessary about doing that yesterday.
Tell me why you just referred to us as ridiculous. Tell me why we were lied about with the MLK bus.
I think the debate is ridiculous, and I did not say anything about ML. You're a look. You're deflecting in order to avoid
NBC covered that false report. NBC covered that false report, as did 3,000 other articles that are still up online. Chuck, you can't have a press coming into the Oval Office on day one of the administration. We welcome them in to be open and gracious and to have a great relationship with the press. It came in, and the press pooler wrote a false article about the removal of the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. days after President Trump met with Martin Luther King III, Martin Luther King Jr.'s son, in New York City, and had a very constructive, open conversation where Martin Luther King Jr.'s son said, we have to unify and help heal the country together. And boom, any snarky attempt to try to undercut this president in the Oval Office while he's doing the business of the country. We can't have this kind of relationship.
I completely agree, but I'm sitting here trying to answer basic questions, and you're trying to attack me with some...
I'm not attacking you. You attacked us as ridiculous.
With some weird Twitter feed that you guys are obsessed with. Look, I'm going to have to leave it there. You have another interview to go to. I have a rest of the show to go to. Kellyanne Conway, I appreciate you coming on to share your views.
Ask Chuck Schumer why we don't have cabinet secretaries approved. We nominated 21. They've approved 2.
I will, among the questions I have for him.
Thank you.
That's actually incredible. But again, I've run out of adjectives. How do you describe them? Incredible. I mean, alternative facts. It's as if everything that we've ever taken for granted in our slightly... what would you call it? It's a slightly complacent Western way. Tell you what, that Joni Mitchell song, You Don't Know What You've Got Till It's Gone, has really resonated quite so powerfully around the Western world as it does at the moment. But in a slightly complacent way, you kind of presume that if 100 people turn up for something and a journalist says there's 100 people here, then you kind of presume that if the guy who organised it stands up and says that actually there were 10,000 people here, then something breaks, right? Something just snaps. Some alarm goes off. That's what we're discovering now. It doesn't. Nothing happened. There isn't some sort of objective moral compass that starts bleeping furiously when these sort of calumnies go mainstream. That's it, isn't it? Sorry to use the microphone as an attempt to work out my own thoughts on these remarkable and unprecedented issues, but I think that's what it is. I don't understand how you could be different from me on this. On lots of other stuff I do, but on this one, as an official spokesperson, lies through his teeth. Literally lies. Not just embellishes or exaggerates or spins, but literally tries to argue that black is white. You're waiting for something to happen. History's taught us that it doesn't happen. History's taught us that there isn't some sort of big boot that comes down from the sky to stamp out these untruths. History has taught us, long before George Orwell wrote 1984, history had taught us that these lies go unchallenged. And the challenges are dismissed by cynicism. Oh, I don't trust journalists. Let's have a little listen, just so that you know I'm not exaggerating. Let's listen first to Sean Spicer. You've seen the pictures of the inauguration crowds. Look, it doesn't matter whether they're big or small.
Have a look at this. This is Barack Obama's inauguration, a picture taken from the vantage of the Washington Monument back in 2009. And on the right-hand side, at about the same point in the inauguration, this is the crowd that we had today. Obviously, considerably thinner, the crowd for Donald Trump.
To be fair, Washington, D.C. is historically a very Democrat city. Massive majority of people there would have voted for Hillary Clinton. You're not going to pay a fortune to come up from the boondocks and spend the day in D.C. It's not that surprising that the crowd wasn't that big. It doesn't really reflect anything except the distance from D.C. that your core Trump support resides, both, I would argue, geographically and politically.
Why did they show a field where there was nobody standing when they could have shown the stands along the inaugural parade route, where there was also nobody standing?
But here is Sean Spicer, the White House press spokesman, on those crowds.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back.
There's still some reports, which I haven't been able to verify. That's kind of what you say if you're a proper journalist, that there were people in that room and the security services were confused as to who they were, and that all the clapping and the cheering comes from people that Donald Trump brought with him. Now, the thing is, that's quite possibly true, right? Because you've just heard a man claim that it was the largest audience ever for an inauguration. That's just counting. That is literally claiming that 2 + 2 = 5. I've got to stop saying literally when I'm not describing literal things. 2 + 2 = 5. Okay? Just count. And the pictures were not framed, the pictures were not manipulated, the pictures were not photoshopped. There are lies all over the world. All politicians have been caught with their pants down in some ways, but this is absolutely not open for dispute. This is numbers. And then the Park Service reported that they'd seen surprisingly low levels of activity, and they shut down the Park Service. They banned the Park Service in Washington, D.C. from releasing details, an actual, if you will, a government department. So what does the paid spokesperson do when they go out to the networks? Well, this is what they do.
Excuse
and
me,
it's
it
still
does
out
not
there.
excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer
did.
the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one
Chuck,
thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
Alternative facts are not facts, they're falsehoods. This isn't even debatable. She tried to describe falsehoods as alternative facts, as if you have truth and then you have something else that has a different name but isn't lie. And the question really that we'll have a crack at today, and we can come at it from all angles, is whether or not you think he's going to get away with it. I mean, that Spicer speech was quite incredible. Everyone's got bills to pay. Everybody's got, food to put on the table. I'm not going to criticize people for taking jobs in organizations that have, I suppose you'd have to say, tarnished reputations or anything like that. Be a bit pot kettle black these days. But what do you do? What do you actually do when a man stands up in front of the civilized world, the Western world, and says 2 + 2 = 6? And then they send someone else out there to say, well, look, obviously you believe that 2 + 2 = 4, but there are alternative facts. Stop being so overly dramatic, Chuck. There are alternative facts where 2 + 2 does actually equal 6. 13 minutes after 10. What What do you think explains the ability to pull off a con like this? 0345 6060 How does it actually work? When people watch that or listen to that, they hear someone saying 2 + 2 = 6, and they go, yeah, you know what, maybe they do. Yeah, there's so much fake news out there. Maybe 2 + 2 does equal 6. I'm fascinated by the mechanics of it. By the actual psychological mechanics of it. 2 + 2 = 6. Yeah, God, yeah, you shut up with you. The country's had enough of experts. 2 + 2 used to equal 4, but this is a new dawn. We're making America great again. And in the new America, 2 + 2 = 27 today. 6 yesterday. Never 4, though. Never 4. How does it work? I mean, how does that not break something? How does that not set off some sort of international alarm bell? I don't know quite what the question is that I want to ask you today, because it's such uncharted territory, this. I've only ever seen it in history books. The madness of crowds, they call it sometimes. But this isn't just crowds. To go on national television and essentially try to rebrand an utter falsehood as an alternative fact. How does it work? I don't get it. 0345 6060 is the number you need. And I, at the moment, think he's going to pull it off. I can't quite see how, if the outrage isn't already there. We said this a lot during the campaign, didn't we? If that doesn't kick him into touch, nothing will. I thought mocking the disabled journalist.
Donald Trump facing new criticism for something he did on the campaign trail last night in South Carolina while defending his debunked claim that he saw thousands of Muslims celebrate the collapse of the Twin Towers here in New York. He appeared to mock a reporter with a disability. Take a look.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said. This is 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction.
That reporter he is talking about is Serge Kovaleski, who now works for the New York Times. As you can see right there, he suffers from a chronic condition that impairs movement of his arms. A Times spokesman says they find it outrageous that Trump would ridicule the man's appearance.
Or claiming that John McCain wasn't a proper military hero. This is from an effective draft dodger, because he got caught, because he got taken prisoner in Vietnam.
But, you know, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that, because I don't like losers. But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. Hero. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay?
Now, getting back to dating, right? And when you got to say to a woman, hey, listen, you got to go to my personal doctor, and I'm going to have you checked out. Is that a tough thing to say to a woman, or you just got the balls to say it?
You know, I'll tell you, it's amazing. I can't even believe it. I've been so lucky,
right,
in terms of that whole world.
You've never gotten a social disease.
It is a dangerous world out there.
It is.
Scary. It's like Vietnam, sort of like, you know, the Vietnam era.
It is your personal Vietnam, isn't it?
It is my personal
It is. You've
Vietnam.
said that many
I feel
times.
like a great and very brave soldier.
A lot of guys who went through Vietnam came out unscathed. A lot of guys who've gone through the 80s having sex with different women came out with AIDS and all kinds of things.
And it's the initial reaction by Donald Trump that is so troubling. His initial reaction was to lash out in a very petulant, vindictive way. And to come out, he didn't just say, oh, their son is a hero, and move forward. He said he actually had the audacity to compare their sacrifice and their son's sacrifice to what he's done as a businessman. That is beyond. Donald Trump is a silver-spooned draft dodger who bragged about betting women while real men of courage were giving their lives serving this country in Vietnam. And he bragged about this and thought this was just wonderful and said that he was a brave soldier, talking about his sexual exploits. And then he goes out there, and this is what he actually wants people to believe, that his sacrifice is somehow comparable. This kind of behavior and reaction by Donald Trump is the temperamentally unfit aspect of his character.
I presumed all of these things would break some sort of bond, some sort of, what would you call it? I tell you what I would call it, civilization, actually. I presumed that these affronts to the most fundamental foundations of what we fondly describe as civilization, something had to snap all the way through it, you know? Boasting about being a sex offender, well, that'll do it. That'll snap it. But I can make some sense of that because the message he was delivering about, or to inadequate, angry, fearful people, and in some cases just misled and misinformed people. You could understand why the message maybe is going to drown out your reservations about being a sex offender or an abuser of disabled people because he's so vile about Mexicans and Muslims, I'm going to forgive all that. But when you actually start lying on your first day in office, you actually send somebody out to tell the American people that 2 + 2 = 5, and nothing happens. I find that, well, look, as an anorak and a political geek, I find it absolutely fascinating and in a strange sense quite exciting as an academic exercise. But our Prime Minister is going to visit this guy later in the week, when really any politician with an ounce of dignity or decorum, even if it involved some sort of suffering on her part or on her country's part, should be standing up and stating in unequivocal terms, you can't do deals with liars. And this lie is so huge. 0345 6060973 is the number you need. How does it work? How does it actually work psychologically, do you think? And I think he's going to pull it off. I don't see how this ends. I don't see what he would have to do in order for what? For the bells to start ringing? For the sirens to start sounding? See what I mean? It's fascinating, right? Unfortunately, it's happening on our watch. We're not examining this through the luxury of a university lecture. This is happening on our watch. I'm a journalist. Now, if I was American, I might have been in that room. And to sit there and watch someone say that black is white, that truth is lies, that 2 + 2 = 6, and not feel spooked, not feel scared, not feel in any way betrayed or... Go on, help us out. Let's try and work it out today together. 10:17 is the time. And imagine if in that last travel bulletin, Joanne Webb had told you that the, that the M1 is absolutely clear and you can fly through it faster than a hot knife through butter, and then you were actually on the M1 and you were sitting in stationary traffic. What would happen? Or if I told you, now it's lovely out there, seriously, if you haven't gone out yet, go out in shorts, don't forget your sunglasses, it's absolutely toasty right across the United Kingdom. What would happen when the evidence of your own senses proved to you that I was lying? Nothing happened. This is fascinating, isn't it? I think it's as if we wait for an international police force of truth to say, no. Look, we can do spin, and there's always a little bit of fibbing on both sides, but to claim that black is white, to claim that 2 + 2 does not equal 4, I'm afraid you've just set off the alarm, and you're going to have to stop. There is no alarm, which is why I think he's going to get away with it. We are watching the descent of America into a comparable relationship with information and truth that you see in North Korea. And what's astonishing is that we should have had all the weapons to stop it from happening. Saeed is in Streatham. How does it happen, Saeed?
James, I'm perplexed. I'll tell you what.
Well, that's no good. I need answers, mate. I've got all the perplexion that anyone can handle.
But when I watched it, the thing that popped into my mind straight away was Chemical Alley.
Yes.
When he was in Baghdad and those tanks were rolling behind him and he's standing there and he's saying, no invaders, no foreign forces in Baghdad. And we could see the tanks behind him.
But I don't want to sound imperialistic or anything like that or culturally superior. But that's, in a regime like Saddam Hussein's, that's par for the course. We all knew it was built on bonkers and lies. This is America.
Yeah, but that's the point, James, because Saddam, if you look at the history, before his whole political basis was built on us against them. Everyone hates us. Don't believe a word that comes out from them. They're the establishment. They hate us. I'm here to protect you. We're seeing exactly the same rhetoric from Trump and his party. Exactly the same. So all his supporters, regardless of those pictures, they're just going to think it's doctored. They're not going to see it as the truth. They're going to think this is what Trump's been telling us. Those people there, they're out to get Trump. Trump told us this from the beginning. So they're just building all of these lies up, and Trump's still telling us the truth. It's a win-win situation.
But even when a phrase like alternative facts gets introduced into the equation, it's almost as if she can't bring herself to say that's not true. She can't actually bring herself to lie quite as fluently as the Sean Spicer fella did. So she says, well, those are alternative facts. Alternative facts? It doesn't even mean anything. It's an oxymoron, isn't it? It's either a fact or it isn't. You can't have an alternative fact.
Yeah, but then we're back to Rumsfeld when he gave his speech. It's the people at the time, they'll say something, And if you support these people, you'll just believe it. You'll go along with it. Who questioned Rumsfeld? The supporters that time in Bush's...
No, see, I disagree with you, Saeed. I appreciate that there are questions to answer. There's not a regime on the planet that hasn't done questionable things and hasn't been economical with the truth or even issued a form of lie to the public. But it's much more complicated usually, and there will be a sort of political rationale for doing it, whether you approve of it or not. This is pants down nonsense. This is claiming that it was the biggest audience ever seen in person, i.e. the people who turned up, when it didn't even beat Obama's first inauguration ceremony himself. I mean, living memory 8 years ago was smaller, considerably smaller than 8 years ago, and yet they say it out loud, and people don't. I don't know what I want people to do. People don't care, do they?
It is amazing. It's amazing that people can see it with their own eyes, but they still...
It's all in Orwell. It's all there in Orwell. It literally is all there in Orwell. War is peace, peace is war. The absolute, what's it called? You just turn it around. The complete reversal of all traditional relationships with information and truth. Andrew, Saeed, take care. 10:26 is the time. If you're struggling to get through, you can grab the phone line. Saeed has vacated by dialing the usual number, 03456060973. Andrew's in Kentish Town. How does it happen, Andrew?
James, I did A-level history a long time ago. My specialist subject was Hitler and the rise of the Nazi Party.
Yes.
Now, look, mate, I voted you. I voted you. Leave the EU. I'm a UKIP member, so my view might be slightly different to a lot of people on this. But
no, but you can count. I mean, you can see the pictures in Washington. You can see the pictures, and you know what the truth is, right?
Dr. Goebbels advised people, when you tell a lie, tell a really big lie, because some of it will be believed, some of it will stick. And the other parallel I would draw is that Donald Trump appears to have already identified that common, invisible enemy that you can't put your finger on, but everybody sort of knows one of them. Know where I'm going with this in the 1930s?
Yes, of course I do.
And he's identified the media. That is the common enemy of the people. So he's already got two of those things in place. Now, I'm right wing, but I see these very worrying parallels already.
You surprise me. I mean, well, in a way, I suppose it's a source of some relief that even though you describe yourself in the terms that you do, the scales have fallen from your eyes with this fella, with Trump. But surely throughout the campaign, he was providing plenty of evidence that this is how he was going to behave.
There were two atrocious candidates.
Well, no, yeah, but that's not the same. One of them was poor and never should have been in the race at all, arguably, from the Democrat machine. One of them was abusing disabled people, boasting about sexually assaulting women, describing former prisoners of war as not being heroic, promising to release his tax returns and then laughing when he was asked. I mean, you're comparing apples with pears. And now, this pivot that was supposed to happen, don't worry, he's just saying what he needs to say to get into the White House. And people like me say, I don't know that might be a little bit complacent. He's in the White House, he's doubling down on the lies, and you mentioned Goebbels, and I understand why you do, but this isn't a big lie. It's a big lie in the sense of how blatant it is, but it's really trivial. Who cares how many people turned up for the inauguration?
So if you get the first one swallowed,
exactly.
The next one.
If people are going to swallow this, what comes next?
The little Austrian corporal was coming out with a lot of hate stuff while he stood for power as well. Didn't he?
Yes, of course he did. I'm just surprised by your politics when you describe the sort of the creep of fascism so accurately, and yet it would appear.
History tells us, James, that every now and again you have to be fairly weird to want to get into power first of all, because everybody, like a radio presenter, everybody thinks you belong to them, and vice versa. And you interrupt people over and talk over them on the radio.
You may be slightly losing your thread there. Maybe I need to interrupt and talk over you a little bit more. But don't worry, the news is here to rescue us both. So I mean, you compare him to Goebbels, and yet you describe yourself as a UKIP voter. Your man is there, effectively cozying up to him. How do you feel about that, Andrew?
I think Nigel Farage may have got something wrong there.
Well, yeah. 10:30 is the time. How does it happen? How does it work? How do you end up in a place that you never thought people like you would end up in. People like us would end up in a place where official government spokespeople can lie through their teeth. We associate, the first caller mentioned Comical Ali, the fellow who was denying the arrival of foreign forces, as you could literally see the tanks behind him. And we laughed in a slightly patronising first world way. Oh, those silly totalitarians, look at them, look at the state. We've got it now in America, and to a lesser extent, arguably, Britain is moving in that direction as well. But the scale and the nature of these new lies that have come out in the first 24 hours of Donald Trump's administration, well, I guess as long as you can keep your fear at bay, the fascination rules. How does it work? And is he going to pull it off? What does failure look like on something like this? What does fight back look like? I mean, these massive marches right around the world at the weekend, millions of people. I use the plural of the word millions. I think that's been verified. I wouldn't want to put a definite on it, but if I said there were 50 million people out there when there were palpably not, then I'd be moving into the same territory as Trump's people. How does it work? And what does failure look like for a project like this? Does it have to end, as history suggests it probably will, with some sort of manufactured war designed to distract attention away from domestic dishonesty? It's what Putin does. That's why he's in the Crimea. You distract from domestic dishonesty, keep the people's eyes away from reality, give them something else to focus on. In most cases, a war. Dee is in Barnet. Dee, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yes, when you speak of war, I've been through one myself because I was brought up in the old Yugoslavia. And I find it extremely chilling watching what's happening in America, because to me, Trump's way of operating reminds me a lot of Milosevic and to extent Tudjman as well. I mean, for some good 10 years after Tito died, bear in mind I was sort of about 10 years old when Tito died, so I don't remember as well as my parents would have, but I was a teenager when the war erupted.
Right.
We were told all sorts of things, continuous propaganda, and it was in small incremental proportions. But after so many years, I suppose people start to believe. And I think the reason why Trump can get away with this lie now, or he believes he can, is because he has prepped the American audience, or at least the proportion of the American audience who are willing to listen to him, the ones that have voted for him, through his long standing campaign. And also, I think what basically contributes to this is his personality. I work as a psychological counselor, and from that perspective, I find it also extremely chilling, because he is a narcissist, in my opinion, and he cannot bear to be found to be wrong. And I also found it absolutely, as you say, fascinating, if not, once I put my fear aside, the fact that at the conference that he held at the CIA offices, he blamed the media, whereas a few days before he was inaugurated, he blamed CIA as well as the media. So it very much depends whose presence he's in, depends what his audience are. He will tell what he believes that audience wants to hear.
But the audience at the press conference was the world. And the fellow was sent out. They've already tried to claim that Trump was unhappy with him, but that's part of the con. The audience at the press conference was the world, and they were telling the world that arithmetic isn't real.
Because that's what he believes. He believes there is his own alternative reality, and I don't think that he operates psychologically in the same way that everyone else or most people seem to operate.
But the people listening, the people in the room are not part of his alternative reality. You have to presume that the majority of people who voted for him are not part of his alternative reality. A lot of people that voted for him must be freaking out already, but it's the people who aren't freaking out that I'm most fascinated by.
Because I think that they want to be part of his alternative reality, because, and again, I watched the program last night, the chap who was traveling down the Route 45, and the people he was asking who had voted for Trump, I couldn't say that they were deranged in any way, or majority of them.
No, of course not.
They seemed frightened. They were in poverty, and they believed that, okay, this man might not be of the full ticket, but they thought that he would be the only one to offer some kind of solution. So they are willing to push aside those fears, and they are willing to believe him to be a better person than I think he actually is. And that, I think, is the worrying part of this. That in my opinion, Bernie Sanders would have been a much better answer.
Well, maybe, but that ship has sailed, and I mean, when you were growing up in Yugoslavia, and you saw, because it's a conflict I know a little bit about. Funnily enough, in the finest snowflake tradition, I did have a couple of refugees living in my spare room during the course of that war, but life has changed and moved on since then. And it was the thing that struck me. My friend came from Sarajevo. And it was people that he'd been at school with ended up being his mortal enemies. That astonishing ability to inject hatred and bitterness into divisions that didn't previously exist. That I think is what chilled me the most.
Yeah, and that's exactly, that's how the psychological twisting of the screw almost works. That you start, and one of your presenters mentioned the word gaslighting yesterday, and I would...
That was Stig Abel, I believe. And this is a reference to the trying to persuade people very incrementally. It refers back to a Patrick Hamilton play that they're mad.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works, because you start to question your own mind. You start to question, did I really see that? Did that really happen? It couldn't have. But then when it's continuously reinforced, and
I guess when you've got this is where the fake news thing comes into it, when it looks like the real thing, where it's dressed up and the fonts are the same, and Kellyanne Conway goes on TV and she gets treated with the same respect as people who aren't telling lies. She's on the same sofas and the same screens as people who are far from perfect and deeply flawed, but they're not actually trying to punt the idea that 2 + 2 equals 3. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Dee, thank you. A worrying perspective, but I find it a very persuasive one. Anil is in Pinner. Anil, what would you like to say?
Well, what I really wanted to say was that he fulfills a visceral American need. They need to be lied to because they want to be cosseted and coddled. And he's doing it, and he succeeded. The amount of free advertising he's got. Al Capone was an American folk hero and has been, and he succeeded in selling a lie and got Al
Capone. Was he an American folk hero? I don't know that that's true.
I think so, because he got rid of the control on drink.
Right, prohibition. Okay.
Yeah, prohibition. He got rid of prohibition. The American people wanted it viscerally. They had it. In this particular case, all the has-beens, they don't want. They know that he's lying. They're prepared to accept his lies. They're convinced that he is a businessman, and like businessmen in America, have been pretty unprincipled over the ages.
No, but then you're still being rational. We've moved beyond that. The 2 + 2 equals 3. His people stood up this weekend and didn't even dress it up as spin, or they lied through their teeth and gave it a name. They called it alternative facts. So, yeah, I understand the arm around the shoulder. I'll look after you. All of your problems are somebody else's responsibility. Your whole life is somebody else's fault. And then I understand people who have got very, very real grievances and have been overlooked and left behind. And all of that is rational. This moves beyond rational. I know it's a little mad, perhaps, to try to rationalize the irrational. But all of your arguments fit in the universe where 2 + 2 equals 4.
Do the Americans reject the irrational? For instance, their forces went into Iraq and they did not count the number of dead, which ran into their hundreds of thousands.
Again, I'm not arguing with that, and it's wrong, and America has done terrible things, but to stand up and say, even to claim that there were weapons of mass destruction when there weren't, you didn't absolutely know that there weren't. Odd though it sounds, Blair and Alistair Campbell and others were desperately hoping they would find them. They managed perhaps to persuade themselves that they would find them, but they wanted to find them. They didn't deliberately, otherwise they never would have got away with the war. They never would have gone to war if they knew that they were never going to be found in advance. That level of lie is new. It's, forgive me, unprecedented. A couple of phone lines free now, if you're quick. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. It's a simple question, but in many ways the most complicated one I'll ever ask you. Now we have a man whose fingers, as Gary has reminded me in a tweet, gets so upset about accurate reporting of the numbers at his own inauguration, and he's the man who's going to have his finger hovering over the nuclear codes potentially at some point in the future. That again is a rational response. I'm frightened of the idea of a guy with such thin skin and narcissistic tendencies being capable of launching a nuclear missile. That's rational. But to sit here and watch someone lie to you, someone tell you that it's not raining, for example. Did he do that? I think he even did that, didn't he? Didn't he claim it wasn't raining at one point? What? I'm drowning. And you're telling me there's no water here? That's the thing that's so interesting, and that's the thing that I guess does divide us as people right down the middle. Is it a question that you know it's a lie, but you don't mind being lied to because some of the other stuff he says is so seductive and attractive? I'll put that on the list. You know it's a lie, but you don't mind. And then it would be, how can you not mind? And the answer would be, because he's going to build a wall and he's going to deport people and he's going to do this and he's going to do that and he's going to reopen coal mines and we're all going to get a magical unicorn delivered to our front porch by Christmas. I kind of get that. But that should be a relatively tiny proportion of people. How does it work? How do they actually do it? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Remarkably, someone's just recommended that I read The Third Policeman, which is a superb book written by Flann O'Brien, but it's an exercise in surrealism. And this texter writes, it's uncanny how we're slipping into such an obscure place where all those things we are sure we experienced never happened at all. That is what it's like. No wonder Orwell's 1984 has been such a seminal and iconic book. I always read it with a sort of slight, a bit like I read The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. I always read it with a slight, wow, it's a bit over the top, but it's blooming good. It wasn't over the top at all, was it? And you know what the really sad thing is? I almost hesitate to tell you this, but the really sad thing is if you're queuing up on social media to have a pop at me, that's great, as long as you're still listening. But the really sad thing is people like me arrive at the positions we arrive at and hold the opinions that we have because we hold our fellow man in really high regard. We presume that when push comes to shove, people will do the right thing, that empathy and decency and harmony will triumph. That's how you end up where you are. And the other thing you do, you imagine how you'd want the world to behave if the boot was on the other foot, if you were being persecuted, if you were fleeing war, if you were looking for sanctuary and refuge. You just naively perhaps or idealistically presume that ultimately people are good. We're living in an era now, people like Donald Trump are backing and banking and betting on people being nasty. That's how he gets away with it, isn't it? I don't know. More of your thoughts after this. It's just on one level fascinating, on another level freakish, and on just about every imaginable level kind of scary, but not everybody is scared. Some people are more scared of having the lies pointed out. Shut up, James, move on. Oh, why do you let him talk about it? So you say, look, 2 + 2 really is 4. Shut up, silence him. No, I promise you 2 + 2 is 4. Mr. Trump's people are lying when they tell you it's 3. Ah! You never know how many of them there are. Quite bizarre. Right up until this weekend, you could kind of make sense of it. You could see why people would just sort of park their conscience, as it were, because their self-interest had been so successfully seduced. He's going to make my life better. Why do I know that? Because he said he is. Have I got any proof of that? No, but hey, casinos. This weekend, his paid spokespeople tried to tell the American people that 2 + 2 = 3. They coined the phrase alternative facts. That's incredible. So has there been a massive wake-up across the continent? I've got a few messages from people who say they've kind of shifted. First caller, second caller to the program, describing a kind of scales falling from the eyes moment. But I don't understand how anybody could still look at the person telling the lies and not see a liar. And fascinatingly, on a kind of social level, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no sort of Tracy family, is there? There's no international rescue. There's nothing that stops these things from happening. If we hadn't learned anything from history, we should have learned that. These people rise on tidal waves of lies and division, and there isn't an international coast guard coming in to fight them. I think that's probably where complacency lies. Supranational organizations like the United Nations and, I'm afraid to say it, the European Union, they exist as a form of bulwark against this kind of process, but they're never going to be foolproof. They're never going to be watertight. NATO, UN, to a lesser extent EU, all of these supranational organizations are designed to stem the rise of dictators. No wonder he hates NATO. No wonder he hates the EU. Owen is in High Wycombe. Owen, what's going on?
Hi there. I just don't think Trump will get away with it.
He already has.
Well, not in the long run. I don't think he has. I felt like yesterday the media did hold him accountable. They went pretty crazy over it.
Yes, but they're liars. They're liars. This is the fake media. This is you can't chuckle. These people are out there. It was all George Soros paid for it all. I mean, so some of them. These are British people. I get my mad messages from. So you have to presume the American equivalent times 10.
Yeah. I mean, you asked about the psychology. I think Trump thinks he can say 2 + 2 equals 1.5 million or whatever.
Yes.
Because it may have worked during the campaign. Trump was teaching math and like Clinton was teaching English during the campaign. Now the English teaching has stopped. Everyone's focused on the math teacher. And most of the media are teaching us that 2 + 2 actually does equal 4. And people are learning he's lying.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
So what does that lead to? I mean, impeachment aside, bloody nose for the Republicans at the midterms, or I mean, this is the problem: is that he's playing by his own rules, and yet he can only be brought into line, by which I mean stop lying. I'm not looking for anything more severe than that. By the old rules. So it's as if you're expecting the rules of the old game to somehow penalise, punish, identify him, but he's torn up that rule book. He's wiped his backside with it.
Well, I think maybe he thinks he has, but...
Well, I think he has as well, mate, actually, I have to say. He abused a disabled person. He literally abused a disabled person in public and got cheered for it. And nothing happened. There's no... I mean, the first thing I try and teach my children, the relationship between actions and consequences. There aren't any consequences for his actions. He won.
I think that was because the spotlight was split between both Clinton and him, though, during the campaign.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, you're right. Statistically, the reasons are legion, but it should... I guess what I'm saying is I can't quite understand how anybody could vote for him after some of the things he did, let alone enough to win an election, even if Hillary Clinton was half of the things she was accused of being. Even if... I still don't see how you vote for the man who did X, Y, and Z, and now proves all along that the people calling him a liar were right. He's proved it within an hour of getting into office.
Well, no, I completely agree with you, yeah. I mean...
And you rang up to be optimistic. Have a great day. 10:55 is the time. Andrew is in Belgium. Andrew, what's going on? Whereabouts in Belgium are you, Andrew? That's a little vague.
Antwerp.
Andrew's in Antwerp. What would you like to say?
Well, Jay, I couldn't resist calling in this morning. I mean, I was, saying past tense, quite a fan of Mr. Trump in the sense of the change he was promising and the fact that he made it this far. Until yesterday, I mean, even if the facts were false, I find it extremely immature for a grown man who's the president of the United States to come out shouting against the press in that sense. I mean, that's if it was false, and the fact is that it's been proven that everything was true. So it's quite worrying of what's going to go from here. What's going to happen?
How could yesterday have been a pivot point for you? I mean, given that I just see it as proof and evidence of what many people were saying all along, and these conversations have to be conducted in a way where I don't patronise you or insult you. That's something that I think everyone needs to take on. But how could you have been so stupid to fall for it for so long and you only saw the light yesterday? Why can't you be more like me? That's a stupid way to conduct the conversation. But imagine I've managed to ask you that question in a really polite, non-patronising way, and answer it, please.
I'll try my best. Well, to be honest, the last few months, every time you've been talking about this type of topic, I've been shouting at the computer which I listen to.
Yes, of course.
And thinking, James, move on. He's won the election.
No, you can't move on.
Yes,
you can't, because look at this.
He is a slightly crazy guy. And for example, these marches that have been going on, I find it totally uncalled for. It was an election. He won the election, and I suppose, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't a fan of Mr. Obama. I don't think
you don't have to be. But how could you have been a fan of a man that boasts about assaulting women, promises to release his tax returns but doesn't, so obviously has some epic secrets financially to hide, when the one big thing he's got going for him is supposedly his financial acumen, abuses disabled people, insults on an industrial scale. I just, in a way, I can kind of see you're not even American, so he's not selling you a better future. What did you see that you liked?
No, I suppose it's the fact that I'm sick and tired of the regular politicians, and I think that's what most of the world. I think that's what most of the world is sick and tired of. All
well,
this
not most of the world. I'll give you half, maybe, but definitely not most of the world. And even then, you're sick and tired of a regular politician, so you elect an absolute fraudster.
Well, I wouldn't. Until yesterday, I wouldn't have called him. I always thought, obviously, he's crazy. I mean, if I don't think he's crazy, I'm crazy. He's definitely not crazy is maybe a bit harsh, but he's not your norm. He's the way he conducts his speeches, etc. We all know that. But it was only when I just again, I don't think we're going to see the clouds clear. I'm grateful to you for the call. Keep shouting at the computer or the radio or whatever medium you're employing to enjoy my words of wisdom. But I guess better late than never would be the nicest thing I could say to you. And maybe Andrew is evidence of a broader truth, which is that all that stuff he was just doing that to get elected. And who can blame him for carrying on when it was working so well? Maybe he had reservations and second thoughts, but when he gets into a White House, he's not going to lie through his teeth to the American people. Well, you're going to have to review that position. I'm going to crack on with this for a little bit longer because somebody has to. This is literally how fascism unfolds. The most important question anyone asked in the run-up to or I saw anyone ask in the run-up to the American election was whether or not there was any point in history where someone who appealed to fascistic tendencies in order to get elected abandoned them and turned out not to have been fascistic at all after getting elected. And it's a very hard question to answer. It's a very odd tiger to harness oneself to if you don't actually buy into it or mean it. And the fella, of course, that wrote Trump's speech, again, he spent a week claiming he'd written it himself and even tweeted a photograph of himself looking what he considered to be pensive with what looked like an enormous pen, but that's just because his hands are so tiny, and contemplating what his speech would be. And then his aides conceded over the weekend that it had actually been written by Steve Bannon and the other fella, Prince Rebus. Steve Bannon, of course, who founded Breitbart, a white supremacist website, actually writing the speech. So it's real. I mean, it's not okay. We'll get the white supremacists on side. We'll get the fascists on side. We'll get the Nazis on side. And then when we get in, we'll let them all down because we'll be quite decent. Actually, that's happened. And that ship has sailed. They're in the White House. They're doubling down on the lies. And he's got a Nazi sympathizer, effectively, doing his legwork for him, doing his PR for him, writing his speeches for him. Fine. I get all of that. What I don't get is the simple binary relationship between truth and lies and how people can be told a lie and not care or not think that it's evidence perhaps of a broader truth. So if I tell you a lie about this, it's why I'm quite old-fashioned with regard to marital fidelity. If you can cheat on your wife and you're a politician, you can lie to your wife. I don't think you'll find it very hard to lie to people who you're trying to convince to vote for you. There's plenty of people who've never cheated on their wives who are going to be liars as well if they're politicians. But it's an indicator, a small truth from which you extrapolate a much bigger one. If you can lie to your wife, what problem will you have lying to your electorate? If you can lie to absolutely everybody in the world, how can you ever be trusted again on anything? And leaving aside the personality issues with the sort of narcissistic obsession with how it gets reported, claiming not to care about the media when tweeting endlessly about how awful they are, claiming not to care about the lampooning on Saturday Night Live, the best way to prove that you care is to tweet about something. I don't care about this at all. It's awful. It's rubbish. I did. It's just hilarious until you remember that he is... Well, he's the leader of what used to be the free world. So I want to examine a little more that psychology, that lie, that almost willful. Because you watch the North Korean footage and you feel sorry for them, right? You think, they're all laughing with rictus terror on their face whenever Kim Jong-un cracks a joke. You know that they're frightened of being carted away and shot if they don't do what they're told. You kind of look at things like that. And to a lesser extent, I guess, Chemical Alley era Iraq, and you sort of think these people have no choice. That's the nature of authoritarianism, the nature of dictatorship, is that its subjects have no choice. They have no choice. You even read 1984 and Winston Smith's efforts notwithstanding, there's a tiny little bit of you that doesn't, you don't see these people as exercising free choice. They've had their free choice taken away by propaganda and manipulation and lies. Well, this is choice. People are choosing either to believe lies
or to not care about lies. And that makes civilization itself vulnerable. Because there's no such thing as truth anymore. It's all there. It's all in Orwell. It's all in history. And I don't get it. I want you to explain it to me. I doubt you're going to be able to do it from the point of view of someone who's part of the problem, because you're not going to ring up and say, yeah, I know it's all lies, James, but the reason why I've chosen to believe them is, or the reason why I've chosen not to care much about this is, so we have to try and work it out from the outside. I know the effort now that goes into convincing yourself that it's not a lie, that there'll be Photoshop pictures doing the rounds with little bits circled, but then you do what kind of intellect demands you do, and you have to try and explain what the motivation is. So Donald Trump has been elected. Why on earth would news organisations lie about how many people turned up at his inauguration? What's in it for them? Why would he lie? It's obvious. It's as if we've stopped looking at the second page of a story. We only ever look at page one and pick a side. Why would they lie? In a similar sense, because the parallels with Brexit are getting bigger every day, aren't they? In a similar sense, if the European Union was really, really bad for Britain, why would so many people have argued it was good? Why would they be lying? But we'll concentrate on Trump. The lie. Make sense of the lie to me. Helen is in Guildford. Helen, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James. I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a bit nervous.
Oh, it's only me, Helen. Thank you for breaking your duck.
I love your show, actually. It's the one sort of beacon in the media, to be honest.
You're very kind. There are others, but I'm not going to tell you about them. I don't like competition.
Difficult to find. I think I'm maybe sort of backtracking a wee bit, but my question is, why, when this guy stood up there and said it was the most watched inauguration in history, why didn't the press corps just laugh at him? It was so obvious. Why, when he went to the CIA, an organisation he had been excoriating a day or two before, did they cheer him?
Well, there's reports that they didn't. There's reports that a lot of people in the room didn't know who the people clapping were.
Yes, I read that as well, and I also read that these were people who had somehow won a lottery.
Yes.
If I win the lottery, that's not the lottery that I want to win, quite frankly.
Well, no, but I guess it's like a Potemkin village. You take a crowd with you wherever you go, and everything you say gets clapped. I mean, the same thing happened at the first press conference after the election, where he had his own staffers in the room, and every single staffer present, of course, was present at the expense of a journalist who'd applied to be there and been turned away. You shouldn't really have any staffers in the room at a press conference.
No, they shouldn't be there. My view is that I think this whole thing about the inauguration crowd shows that his ego, as we all know, is completely out of control, and I think the press have to work together. Firstly, to laugh when they come out with this, like the alternative fact woman. She should have been laughed off screen.
She was. Actually, have a listen to this. Have a listen to the Kellyanne Conway clip, because as a journalist, I don't know how you respond to this. I think as a profession, the biggest ball we've dropped in recent years is not making people explain what they mean when they use certain words and phrases. But this guy did laugh. Listen.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did
Yes,
not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts.
See, he did laugh. I mean, what else can he do at that point in proceedings? She's the paid press spokesperson. She's the counselor for Donald Trump. She's the surrogate. What do you do?
I don't know. But my view is that the press need to work together, and to laugh at him and to laugh at his alternative fact, not to laugh at his supporters, because I think that was a mistake that they made with all this deplorables talk and who would vote for this man. Don't laugh at them. They voted, but laugh at the man, because his ego just will not be able to take it, and I hope that we will have a big implosion from him. Having said that, I'm terrified that then we have Pence as president. You know, I don't think he's any better, to be honest.
I suppose he's awful in a conventional way, is the only way I could describe it. I mean, but then there'd be plenty of people who like his politics with regard to homosexuality and abortion and all those other great steps forward that humanity took in the 20th century. Some people see them as problems and steps back, but I can get my head around that. I find it repellent, but he's not trying to persuade me that 2 + 2 = 3. Even when he argues that you can have electric shock treatment to be cured of homosexuality, I can sort of conceive of circumstances in which someone could arrive at such a crazy conclusion. But I can't conceive of circumstances in which someone would hear a liar lying and not care.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the Pence, you could come up with arguments to counter him.
Yes, that's right.
It's this whole circuitous argument that goes round and nothing touches him. He's made of Teflon. That's obviously the orange glow. But
Is he? Do you think he is? I mean, because he said himself, didn't he, that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his voters wouldn't care, which was effectively saying my voters are so. And I know we're laughing at him, not at his supporters, but he is, when he says things like that, he's saying they are so stupid that I could literally murder someone and they'd still think I hadn't done it. He knows. I mean, that's the one thing he knows. He knows that he can do this. The question is how long he's going to be able to get away with it for, and I think indefinitely.
Well, I think in a phrase that was tacked to Bill Clinton's wall of it's the economy, stupid. And I think if he can't deliver on the jobs front, if he can't make America great again, whatever that means.
Doesn't matter though, does it? Because he'll start a war. That's what you do. And that's why the Russians love him so much. It's the same thing Putin does.
They will just find another group to blame. You're right. So therefore, what do we do? You know, we live in a world of alternative facts. In which case, I'm a 6-foot supermodel. I'm not a 5'1.5", 60-year-old woman.
Well, I obviously bearing an uncanny resemblance to Brad Pitt has been more of a curse than a blessing to me, Helen. But we all bear our crosses in whatever way we can. 13 after 11. A couple more on this. Give me a ring now. I've got a couple of phone lines free. If like Helen, you've never rung in before, but you find yourself sort of puzzled by how other people can not care about being lied to. I guess that's the question I want answering. And listen to that clip again. Listen to the Kellyanne Conway clip again. This is going to be a little bit niche. I appreciate that not everybody's as interested in how journalists respond to the new reality as I am. But listen to this.
Excuse me. It does not excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer
did.
the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
What happens at that point? What do we do at that point? I mean, what would you do if you were in that studio? And remember, these aren't punters that have been brought in from weird websites or think tanks. This is the paid mouthpiece of the president. That's different even from being a politician, an opposition politician. The paid mouthpiece of the president tries to rebrand a lie as an alternative fact. What should a journalist do in that scenario? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo, because if you chuck them out, you say, like, there's no point continuing this conversation. You are trying to rebrand lies. That's what they're doing. They're rebranding lies, right, as alternative facts. You chuck them out. I'm not continuing, and then boom. It's censorship, shutting down debate, can't cope with criticism. So in the name of free speech, you have to let people in the pay of a president lie to you? You see just why this is so interesting. I just wish it was an academic discussion we were having rather than a real life one. What should that studio journalist have done when the paid mouthpiece of the American president tried to rebrand a lie as an alternative fact? Because it's a really tough call. You know how it works in the current environment, in the current climate. If he'd said, you've lost your right to speak to my viewers by effectively excusing lies, then that would be held up as evidence of MSM, mainstream media, shutting down debate. You can tease it out, of course, but how often do you actually get the opportunity to give one of these people enough rope to hang themselves? Very, very, very rarely. So what happens when they say it's not a lie, it's not a falsehood, it's an alternative fact? 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. And on a broader question, just the psychology of crowds, of how you could sit there watching listening, receiving, being lied to, and not care enough to call it out. In fact, possibly to care so little about the lie that you will go onto the internet desperately searching out proof that it was all something created by George Soros has become the new name. I don't really know why. I presume he was a big funder of Hillary Clinton's campaign, and that one of these weird websites has therefore put two and two together and, in full Trump style, come up with three. I had mates on the march yesterday. Apparently George Soros funded it. So where do they send their invoices? Well, do you know? Does anyone know? George Soros funded all these marches. So where do we get our money from? Everyone who went. I know 3 or 4 people. I sort of met a lovely woman at Victoria Station who was on her way there. Presumed I was too, but sadly I was up to much more run-of-the-mill stuff. Where do you send your invoice? Does anyone know where you send your invoice? Where do you get your money off George Soros? Because that is what is going around the world now. That's the response now. Is it was all funded by George Soros. Maybe he put some bucks up for it, but in terms of people who turned up in Trafalgar Square with a sign, how does George Soros' money play into that? I haven't got a clue, James. Please stop asking difficult questions. I'm going back over to the far right websites to reassure myself that the world is exactly as I see it. Richard's in Gainsborough. Richard, what is going on?
I wish I could tell you, but you have brought a moment of clarity to me.
Oh, good.
This moment.
First time for everything.
Unfortunately, it also sort of breaks down the US situation from Brexit, but let me go with it.
Yes.
It suddenly occurred to me, this is basically American jocks versus nerds. The jocks have taken over the US government. They're swaggering, they're full of attitude, they're stupid, and they're relying on the nerds to do all the boring stuff like make stuff, design stuff, do maths that makes sense. In the meantime, they're swagging around in their puffer jackets, telling everybody that they know best and bullying anybody who disagrees with them. And that's different from the Brexit situation because it does come with that whole American attitude, which will put aside the truth for the convenience of being cool. And obviously, in the British situation, we don't really do cool.
We're not in that sense, no. I kind of get it. I mean, obviously, there are plenty of people who are jocks who are lovely, sensitive, open-minded people, but we're dealing in broad generalisations, and the idea is that if you and you want to be liked by them, you want to be on their team, so you don't care if they, I don't know, molest your girlfriend or lie to you about what's happening because you're in their gang, and there's only one thing worse than being in their gang, and that's not being in their gang.
Absolutely, and locker room talk suddenly makes complete sense. You know, you're a lad, you're one of the cool guys if you do that stuff, and then laugh about it later. And okay, sometimes you have to apologise when you're caught out, but really, you're one of the fun guys, you're one of the good guys, and all the rest of the gainsayers are nerds and can be laughed at and ignored at your own convenience.
And this country has had enough of experts. It says Michael Gove, kind of the king of the nerds. That shows the parallels work, but things are even madder than we first suspected. How do you account? Is it really that simple? I'm so desperate to be on their side that I'm not going to analyse or criticise at all, because I still struggle quite to square that with the desire not to abuse his followers. Do you see what I mean? Not to abuse his supporters. You're effectively saying that they're credulous fools.
Well, I think there's, as in all things, this is one of your favourite words is nuanced, isn't it? But
yes.
But essentially, if you take a position, I mean, America, thank God for Louis Theroux, exposing is full of radical, out there groups who garner support and are able to protest on street corners. And, it's not the whole population, it's not the whole electorate, it's not its whole support base, but the Americans have a great way of completely believing their own, let's say, BS.
It's like the Westboro Baptist Church has taken over the Vatican, though, at the moment, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and also, the Americans like an extremist. They like someone who's got a very strong opinion about something, whatever it is, whether it's race or religion or tractors. And they gather around it and get themselves T-shirts.
I've got the best tractors. I've got the best tractors.
You know, and I think he's garnered all those little groups of people who, you say, haven't had enough of experts, haven't enough of being told which way's right, being told that they need to do it a certain way. You know, the boring Obama Democrat way, where we're reasonable and we listen.
The country has had enough of experts, and Obama was far from perfect. That's the other thing that liberals tie themselves in not saying, is that, oh, Hillary Clinton was far from a perfect candidate. There are lots of questions she should have answered. Oh, Barack Obama was far from a perfect president, as if somehow on the scales of reality, a barefaced liar and a fallible politician are playing on the same pitch. The mind boggles. Do you know, I'm getting a lot of messages of people who were on the march yesterday. Do you know where they get their money from off George Soros?
I wish I did, because I'd write for some.
Well, when I find out, I'm putting it out there. You wouldn't believe the state of my inbox someday. Oh, George Soros. Okay, where do I get my money from? Where do my friends who went on the march, where do they send their invoices? I'll find out for you by close of play today, or I'm a banana. Sam's in the West End. Thank you, Richard. Sam, what would you like to say?
James, I am just surprised how surprised you're acting with all these.
Well, I'm surprised that you're surprised at how surprised I am.
This has been going on since his campaign started. It was all based on lies, and every time a lie came out, he would try to deflect it with a tweet or some of his organization or some of his team going on TV and telling something that you could see the opposite on images or writing paper. And I think people just got used to this, and it's just crazy. But answering the question, you said the way a reporter should react, I think that's the only reaction you have. You need to laugh, because...
Apparently later in that interview, he did laugh more, and she got more and more affronted. So, but again, doesn't that play into the narrative that the media are against us, and they're all kind of... I guess when most of your friends or a lot of your close friends and family are journalists, you find the idea that the media is some massive malevolent organisation hell-bent upon suppressing people and undermining democracy too stupid to even respond to. But maybe we have to start responding to it.
But I think we should. I think the media should, to be honest, James, because the thing is, at the end, what he's doing is the fact that he's so clever about it, because he's now saying, he says to his voters that, okay, I'm going to carry on tweeting because the media doesn't put the truth out there, so you can hear the truth from me. But with that, there's no way to question back, and people just read what is there, and they take it. They take it as gospel, which is absolutely crazy, especially coming from a president. I don't know if you saw his rating, his approval rating is the worst rating since 1990.
Yeah, you can't trust that, though.
Yeah, I get that.
He's got the best ratings. They're asking the wrong people.
But it's the same agency who did for the last 3 presidents.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I got the best ratings. I've got the best ratings. You don't believe these people. I got the best ratings.
Exactly. It's scary. It's scary, the fact that he's not being held accountable. When Meryl Streep said on the Golden Globes about the disabled reporter, he went again on Twitter, and Kellyanne also went on TV to say he didn't mock it, when there is image proving otherwise.
And of course, saying he'd seen Muslims celebrating in New Jersey after September the 11th.
It's just crazy. For me, the more I read, the more I look at it, it looks like a reality show that is being written. And it just doesn't...
I kind of like the Manchurian Candidate crossed with the Truman Show.
Pretty much, yes.
We should pitch that. Let's pitch that this afternoon. I'll tell you what, we'll get George Soros to pay for it. Do you know where people who went on the march yesterday send their invoice to the shady billionaire that bankrolled it all? Any ideas?
I don't know, but I'll let you know if I find out.
No, when you know, I'll know. It's 11:30. Crisis of journalism. It might not seem the most important priority facing the world with a sort of, I don't know quite what phrase to employ. What do you call him? A sort of a narcissistic man-child? I don't know. You alienate people that like him then, but I guess people like narcissistic men-children. Dan Rather is the Don of American journalism, widely regarded as one of the finest, if not the finest, living broadcast journalist. And someone sent me this. I tell you what, it's like a duvet for me, this. Just wrap this around myself and persuade myself I'm not the only one who thinks the emperor hasn't got any clothes on. These, he writes, are not normal times. These are extraordinary times, and extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. When you have a spokesperson for the President of the United States wrap up a lie in the Orwellian phrase, alternative facts. When you have a press secretary in his first appearance before the White House reporters threaten, bully, lie, and then walk out of the briefing room without the cojones to answer a single question. When you have a president stand before the stars of the fallen CIA agents and boast about the size of his crowds, lies, and how great his authoritarian inaugural speech was. These are not normal times. The press has never seen anything like this before. The public has never seen anything like this before, and the political leaders of both parties have never seen anything like this before. What can we do? We can all step up and say simply and without equivocation, a lie is a lie is a lie. And if someone won't say it, those of us who know that there is such a thing as the truth must do whatever is in our power to diminish the liar's malignant reach into our society. There is one group of people who can do a lot very quickly, and that is Republicans in Congress. Without their support, Donald Trump's presidency will falter. So here is what I think everyone in the press must do. If you are interviewing a Paul Ryan, a Mitch McConnell, or any other GOP elected official, the first question must be, what will you do to combat the lying from the White House? Oh, hallelujah. Oh, Uncle Dan. Thank you. Phew. If they dodge and weave, keep with the follow-ups. And if they refuse to give a satisfactory answer, end the interview. There you go. It's almost... facts and the truth are not partisan. They are the bedrock of our democracy. And you are with them. You are either with them, with us, with our Constitution, our history, and the future of our nation, or you are against it. Everyone must answer that question. What are you going to do about the lies coming out of the White House? And we don't get to sit here and snigger anymore, because if they stuck them on the side of a bus, we'd probably have half of our country saluting them. 11:36 is the time. More of your calls in just a moment. That's from Dan Rather. I'll work out how to share it with you, but it's apparently on his Facebook page, and you'll be able to access it thus. That's fantastic. Prior to joining the campaign, so the woman that Dan Rather is talking about there, Kellyanne Conway, before she joined the Trump campaign, she was on Senator Ted Cruz's team. She became one of Trump's most trusted advisors subsequently, but before she was on the payroll, I guess you'd have to call these alternative facts.
I mean, we could just brush it off, but it shows you the danger of just saying things that aren't true and getting people to believe it, and getting 20,000 people in a rally today to just lap it up as if it's true. It's completely transparent. Donald Trump's tax returns aren't. I'd like to see those be transparent. And people start to see that he says he's for the little guy, but he's actually built a lot of his businesses on the backs of the little guy. And a lot of little guys through eminent domain or through not paying contractors after you've built something. The little guys have suffered. So that question is going to be about these Trump victims. The reason the messaging has gotten better since Alex's barn burner of an article 2 weeks ago is they're starting to talk about victims of Trump University, victims of Trump in Atlantic City. Before that, it was his conservative apostasies. Now it's actually you're for the little guy, but you've built your business on the backs of the little guy. And insulting them as Lying Ted and John Kasich, who eats like a slob, and everything else that was said today, which is fairly unpresidential, then I think he should just ignore them. I mean, if he wasn't worried about them, why not just ignore these two people he thinks aren't actual competitors? I actually think they got under his skin today, but it's vulgar. And this is the equivalent, really, in New Hampshire of Donald Trump skipping the debate in Iowa. It cost him votes, and I think people will think thrice now when they go into that ballot box and say, look, I've tried to send a message all along through Donald Trump to the establishment, but now I got to get serious about sending somebody to the White House. And do I want somebody who hurls personal insults or who goes and talks about philosophical differences?
It shows you the danger of not telling the truth. In 6 months, she's gone from it shows you the danger of not telling the truth to trying to rebrand lies as, quotes, alternative facts. It's astonishing. Do you know, we have these conversations every morning at the moment. I start off at 10 o'clock and I think, oh, crikey, have we got the appetite for this? It's the only subject in the world where the appetite actually grows as the time goes on. Usually you peak early and then there's a sort of nice, slow meander back to the junction, back to the end of the... But this gets bigger and bigger and bigger every time we talk about it, because you sort of marvel. You marvel at the scale of the thing. And of course you marvel at the number of people who are still in bed with the lies. It's quite bizarre. And then you see people like Dan Rather, again, I no doubt in some corners of the internet, he's already been described as a, what am I getting today, Zionist shill or MSM stooge. It's just incredible. I used to read history books and think, how could they have locked up Galileo for saying that the Earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around? He had a bloody telescope, he showed them. Now you know, it's not a mystery anymore. You think, yeah, crikey, that was in the days before the Enlightenment, wasn't it? That was in the days before mass free education, before you could pick up a book at the bottom of your street. There's no way that could happen now. What? Oh, Holocausts happen. You used to find that almost incomprehensible, didn't you? The idea that could happen, not just in our living memory, but on our continent. No, not a mystery anymore. I see how it happens. Find the right scapegoat at the right time and the right demagogue with the right support, anything could happen. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Graham's in Whitechapel. Graham, what's going on?
Hello, James. Good morning.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm a full support. I support Donald Trump. I've heard many a lie come out of the White House before Donald Trump was even thinking about running for the White House. Let's go for one lie. The White House is saying that they're not dropping white phosphorus on Fallujah. Al Jazeera is showing me videos of white phosphorus being dropped on Fallujah. You know,
why does that make Donald Trump a truth teller?
Well, I've not said he's a truth teller yet. We haven't even got down to Donald Trump. I'm just pointing out.
Well, that's what the phone-in is about, Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I'm a full supporter of Donald Trump.
Do you think he's a liar?
No, I don't think he's a liar.
When he said he was going to release his tax returns, was he telling the truth?
I think he was telling the truth, but things...
So they're incoming, are they?
Huh?
They're incoming, are they?
Possibly.
Right. And the numbers yesterday, the numbers at the inauguration yesterday, when he sent his press spokesperson out to say they were the biggest ever. I mean, unless you're using a different mode of counting from everybody else, was that a lie or not?
Well, let's put it like this: the pictures that CNN put out and the pictures of the program that I watched on the inauguration, they wasn't the same two things. So I'm not saying that CNN.
So what program did you watch?
I watched it on the internet.
You watched it on the internet, and what cameras were they using?
I think they was using the general cameras or whatever, unless they had their own. I'm not like that technical. I'm not technical like that, James, to know exactly whose cameras they was using.
Do you not want to know? I mean, otherwise you could have been watching anything.
Well, I couldn't have, because Donald Trump was on the stage, so I wasn't watching Kim Jong or anyone else, or President Putin. It was Donald Trump.
But it was somehow that camera was seeing different pictures from all the other cameras that were there. But you don't know where your camera came from.
I've not actually seen actually moving pictures of empty crowds. I've only seen photographs of that.
So you were watching photographs on the internet?
No, James. No, I wasn't watching photographs. I was watching a live stream.
But they weren't moving crowds?
No, I'm talking about the pictures of nobody being there with, like, the empty bits that CNN is rolling out.
How do you know? You didn't watch CNN?
James, I've watched CNN since then.
Since then you've watched it? And you saw different pictures from the ones you saw on the internet?
The kind of person I am. I'm the type of person...
I think I know what type of person you are, Graham.
Well, go on then, you tell me.
You're a kind of person that watches stuff on the internet and thinks it's more reliable than other stuff.
No, James.
All right, sorry. So you've been lying to me.
No. Come on, are you going to let me talk, or are you just going to run me down and try and hassle me into making some kind of fool of myself?
Down the rabbit hole. I'm letting you talk, but that's how you're making a fool of yourself. If I interrupted you more, you'd be making less of a fool of yourself. But you carry on.
Right, okay. So as I was saying, what I saw from CNN was not what I saw live on the stream. What I have seen since watching the stream is different to what I watched when I was watching it. It wasn't the same thing, if that makes sense. I know it won't, because it doesn't make sense to you, does it?
It doesn't matter what I think. Does it make sense to you, what you just said?
Of course it does.
Say it again?
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Say it again?
Listen. I sit down and I watch BBC News. I take in news from all places.
No. It was CNN a minute ago, but say again the stuff you just said that made sense. Say it again.
James, you can rewind it when we're done and just play that again. I'm trying to
That would be cruel.
If you don't want me to make the point, do you want me to just go?
But you keep saying that. I'm hardly talking. Say it again. Explain it again. The same point. Have another go.
No. You see, now that you've riled me up, you're not saying anything. You know what you're doing, James. You're a bear baiter. You're a bear baiter.
And you're a big bear, are you?
No, I'm not a bear.
Oh.
I've got a bit of a beard.
Who am I baiting then?
You're baiting me.
But you're not a bear.
What I want.
Oh, do you know what?
Are you having a
it's
laugh?
awful.
Are you really having a laugh?
I am having a massive laugh, Graham.
Yeah, do you know what? It don't surprise me.
Entirely at your expense, but I've got to find a way not to laugh at you, haven't I? Because you saw us stream.
No.
Thing
Listen,
on the internet.
I watched the inauguration on a live stream on the internet. That's what I did.
Yes.
Now you're picking up on that to say.
But you don't know why the cameras saw something different from what all the other cameras saw there that you saw on CNN afterwards when you watched it on catch up.
That's right. What they were showing.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, ring me back when you found out who was running the cameras that you saw the inauguration on, and then we can find out. We can check it, can't we? We can go objective.
That's absolute rubbish. But anyway, James, go on. You've had your moment.
I've had my moment.
Yeah.
I thought I was interrupting you all the time.
Box of trolls, mate, because you don't let nobody speak. As soon as they're speaking, you interrupt them, and then when they stop speaking, then you don't speak to make them look even stupider.
Oh.
You're good at it. You're good at it.
Well,
but then again, you've had a lot of practice at it, haven't you? So.
Graham, mate, I don't think anything I did in the course of that conversation was responsible for you sounding stupid. I really don't. But if that keeps you comfortable, or that warms you, or allows you to cling to your last vestige of credibility, then I am happy. I am happy to be whatever it is you think I am. Just like you saw whatever you wanted to see on that screen, and everything else is lies, and everything else is nonsense. But you are a great big bear. Well, I mean, look, in the unlikely event that anybody is possessed of a sufficiently open mind to be swayed from the position outlined by Graham the Bear a moment ago, there is full time-lapse video of the whole event in Washington at the weekend. Time-lapse from quite a high angle right through to the end of the day. And you can see exactly where and how big the crowds were and where the gaps were. And some of the lies that the fella told at the press conference included it was the first time that they'd had coverings on the ground. And that if the coverings on the ground hadn't been there, the big gaps wouldn't have looked as big. But that's not really the point, is it? The point that he cares so much is the point, if you want to get meta about it. He's a Republican president in an essentially Democrat city, so just by the dint of logistics, people would have to make long journeys, buy tickets, arrange hotels, find parking. He was never going to get a crowd as big as Obama's first one. I think it was probably bigger than Obama's last one, a first president. I mean, in terms of showbiz, it's absolutely riveting. Although I managed to skip it myself. I didn't watch it live. But it's there if you want to see the time-lapse video. It's not the cameras that our last caller was somehow watching on the internet, but it's a camera that was there, right, the Mail, right up in the sky. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you want to chip in before 12. After 12, I think we will... There's two stories that have drawn my attention this morning. One is the job that George Osborne has got with a fund manager called BlackRock, one of the very, very big fund managers. He's reportedly getting 200 grand a year for 1 day's work a week, and yes, he is still an MP, but let's not go down the politics of envy versus whatever the other one is, school on this one. What do they get for their money? Intrigues me. Because, he didn't really cover himself in glory, George Osborne, did he? You could argue. As a chancellor, you'd struggle really to paint him as being particularly brilliant. And as a reputation on your letterhead, well, in financial circles, he'll be seen, despite the fact that he was actually quite sceptical about the wisdom of having the referendum in the first place. He reportedly advised David Cameron not to do it. His fingerprints are on the result. As the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the second most prominent politician in a governing party that called a referendum, in financial circles, I don't think that's going to endear him to many people. So what do they get for their money? That's one of the stories I was interested in. The other one is a story about a fella who's been warned he might be sent to prison for eating a goldfish. I just don't know where to start on that one. I think it's absolutely bonkers. Sometimes, obviously, when we do animal rights-related issues, we rather rudely have some fun at other people's expense. But no one's going to ring in and tell me that a bloke should go to prison for eating a goldfish, are they? Are they? Rights for goldfish. Then I go my own sort of traditional animal rights spiel, which says, well, why would you not care about a goldfish if you care about a fox? If you're not allowed to set dogs on a fox, you shouldn't be allowed to swallow a goldfish. They're both sentient beings. So we'll do one or the other of those. Would you like to vote? Osborne or Fish? Text 84850. Osborne or Fish? We may, if it's close, do a little bit of both. Back down the rabbit hole for now. Rob's in Stowmarket. Rob, back to Mr. Trump, President Trump, no less. What's going on?
Well, I think we all know what's going on. We're being completely lied to, and I don't think anybody's surprised by that at all, at what's happening. My concern is, how do we stop this? How do we stop him? How do we, put the brakes on and try and get things back on track? I mean, I would not be perfectly happy with a Republican administration, but I would be happy with an older version of the Republican administration compared to the one that we've currently got.
Yes.
And I just think that him constantly attacking the press and the media, as he has been doing, is only, I think, and I hope, is only going to do one thing, and it's going to rally those people into properly digging something up that will bring him down in a legitimate fashion. Sex scandals, that stuff doesn't work anymore. We need some kind of legitimate press alliance, some kind of commitment from all of these people to say, look, we're honourable, respectable journalists. It's our job to hold these guys to account. Let's go and find that thing.
But isn't the attack on the media? Actually, I hadn't thought of this before you explained that. It's a rearguard action being fought in advance, isn't it? Yeah. So that when they come up with something huge, he can say that's lies too.
And that's exactly what it is. It's gaslighting. He's trying to change the public opinion of the press so that when they do come out with a fact, an actual, genuine, provable, evidence-based fact, that he can just turn around and say, it's fake news. And we'll all go, oh, yeah, fake news, because that's a thing. And we don't trust them. No matter what our eyes or our ears are telling us, we won't trust them. Or, a large number of people won't trust them. I just...
So when they find pictures of him possibly in a Russian hotel, or they find his actual tax returns that he promised to publish but won't, or that it turns out that maybe some of the court cases that he's facing at the moment will deliver guilty verdicts, and he becomes a convicted sex offender rather than merely accused by multiple women of being a sex offender and boasting, of course, in private personally of being a sex offender, all of this will be deniable.
Yeah. And we'll buy it because, the press secretary is coming out on literally the first day and telling us we didn't see what we saw, we didn't hear the things we've heard. It's all, alternative truth or alternative facts, and then walking away from the podium and not even giving the press the opportunity to ask the questions, to get more clarification. It's so painstakingly obvious what's going on, this gaslighting, that these guys, the journalists, they need to go away. They need to work with as many people. Gaslighting
is a great phrase. Stig, I think, introduced it into the conversation yesterday, and I had to swat up on what it meant, and it refers back to the Patrick Hamilton play where a sort of dodgy geezer was trying to persuade his wife that she was mad. He was making her question her own sanity by doing various things, but one of the things he did was turn down the light and tell her that it hadn't been turned down, so she started questioning her own sanity. And I get that, and that obviously works in some cases, but it's the people, and I perhaps am a little more exposed to them than most by dint of the job that I do in the radio station that I work for. But it's the people who don't need to be gaslighted that I'm really intrigued by. Because what you're describing is people being successfully conned. That there are people queuing up to shout about how passionately they believe the con. And they're doing it already. That's the thing I find confusing.
Yeah, and I think also it comes down to the fact that politics, I'd say on a global scale, but very much so in America, has been turned into a form of team sport.
Yes.
You're either on one side or the other.
Which is why this word lefty has got such... I mean, it's utterly meaningless in the context of any sophisticated political analysis, but as a brick or an insult, it's great. You're a lefty. You're on the other side to me. Well, hang on a minute. I'm the one that thinks your children or your wife should be able to take contraception. But lefty, enemy, down with you.
Exactly. And the behaviour of these people is just like, I live between Ipswich and Norwich. And, when it comes to football, we have this rivalry between the two teams. And I'm a Norwich fan, and all my friends here are Ipswich fans. And we have this rivalry. And there are people that, despite them winning, they still can't help themselves from being angry at us. And that's what we're seeing with the politics.
The hooliganisation or the fanaticism of mainstream politics. It's beautifully put. Beautifully put. I'm more of a canary than a tractor boy as well, for the record, Rob. But hey, we've been controversial enough discussing international politics.